We've all heard the unfortunate stereotypes of Airbnb hosts, that we're money-hungry capitalists who are on a mission to destroy neighborhoods, fueled by greed and a complete disregard for the community. Don't get me wrong, we aren't naive to the fact that these stereotypes are often grounded in some version of the truth, and that there are people out there who are indeed gobbling up properties or just buying one or two but severely mismanaging them. And we fully support the use of regulations in communities, rules that create and hold STR owners accountable to observing a reasonable set of standards. Wow, this intro got political on us pretty quick, huh? Let's backtrack a bit. Over the years, we've experienced the full spectrum of neighbors, from supportive to downright nasty, and have adopted some best practices to keep these relationships positive and healthy. Most of the time they work, but occasionally they don't, like in some nightmare scenarios that we will share with you later in this video. We wish it was always a beautiful day in the neighborhood, but in reality it's more like the good, the bad, and the ugly.
So let's start with the good. How to build good relationships with your neighbors.
Our biggest tip, and this might seem a little bit obvious, but sometimes simplest is the best, is just talk to your neighbors.
You don't necessarily have to go knock on their door, but chances are you've probably exchanged friendly waves, and next time you see them, just go say hi. Introduce yourself. Let them know what you're up to. If you have a business card, give them one of those, exchange contact info, or we've got these cool new digital business cards that we'll leave a link to in the description below.
Some of our clients have brought little goodie bags over to the neighbors with like a restaurant gift card or something like that. But honestly, I don't think that's necessary. It almost sends a message like you're apologizing in advance for what's to come. What you really want to do is assure them that you're going to be professional, hands-on, and attentive, that you're going to be vetting your guests to the best of your ability, and that you're going to be proactively installing things like a noise monitor or a driveway camera, so that in the off chance that you do have a noise disturbance or an occupancy violation, then you're able to quickly step in and resolve these things.
We've talked about our favorite smart home devices in a previous video, and we'll link that in the description below.
Yeah, that's a good one. Basically, you want your neighbors to know that you want to be respectful of them, that you'll be implementing a good neighbor policy, and that you'll be holding your guests to those same high standards.
So you can't just talk the talk, you've also got to walk the walk. Make whatever promises attainable and achievable. Don't tell them that, your house is always going to be dead quiet, because it's not. But just reassure them that you've got the sort of processes in place to identify issues and deal with them as quickly as possible. And also encourage them to reach out to you anytime.
I think it's good to get to know your neighbors anyway. The more they get to know you, the more likely they are to call you directly in case of an emergency, or to contact you directly before making a noise complaint to the city.
Another good thing that can come from talking to your neighbors is getting to know them. We have artists or skilled tradesmen, and those are people we can support with our business. We also found out that a neighbor from one of our La Quinta properties is a private chef, and we offered to put her contact information in our house manuals. Our next quick tip is to expand that support from your neighborhood to your community.
This is something that might come pretty naturally if you live in the community that you operate in, because you already have that personal tie, and it might be something you have to work a little bit harder at if you're managing a property remotely.
Some simple ways that you can do that are through social media. If you have an Instagram or direct booking site, maybe with a blog, you can create posts that highlight local businesses there.
Right now, we own and/or manage about 30 short-term and mid-term rental properties. And I would say we have good relationship with the neighbors at all but maybe like 2 or 3 of them. But one thing that you're going to find out as hosts and in the hospitality industry in general is that no matter how hard you try, you just can't please everybody.
Hopefully they keep to themselves and don't retaliate, but there are times where things can get bad.
Bad neighbors. Love it. Let's see. I'm thinking of one neighbor in particular. Do you want to say one at the same time? See if we're thinking of the same person?
All right.
1, 2, 3. The Karen.
You beat me. Shirtless man. That's what I was going to say.
Oh, the shirtless man. Okay, let's talk about these two. Okay, so the first one was a client property. This property was a long-term rental for about 10 years before the owner contacted us and decided to convert it to short-term. The owner already knew that this neighbor was particularly grumpy. She had a bit of a reputation in the neighborhood for calling the city about little things. So she decided to go and try and butter her up a little bit while we were in the setup process. This particular neighbor, let's call her Mrs. Grumpy. Mrs. Grumpy refused the gift entirely And she also tried to give her a business card, and she refused the business card and said that if she had an issue, she will not be contacting the property manager, she will be contacting the city hotline. Great start for us, huh? She did end up calling the city hotline on us a couple of times, and all of them were for unwarranted claims. Like, she claimed that we were hosting illegally, even though we were permitted and we're not hosting legally. I don't know, it was silly.
Yeah, and we haven't heard from her in, I don't know, more than a year now. So I think, yeah, knock on wood.
All right, talk about the shirtless Joe.
Yeah, so kind of a similar situation. Next door neighbor. In this case, it was for a midterm rental, so 30 days or longer stays. And this guy, you know, had it in his head from day one, really, that we were like operating a short-term rental. And even though, like, I think our shortest stay there was 45 days, we had like 45, 60, and 90 long stays where he'd seen the same people over and over again. But he'd come around, we'd see him from our driveway camera, usually shoeless and shirtless, taking photos of everything. Like, he took photos of cars, he took photos of the house. I'm not sure why. But
gathering all of the evidence he could to catch us in the act of doing nothing wrong.
Yeah, so he submitted this stuff to the city, and the city would call us, and they're like, hey, we got a complaint. Just like I said, they have to, they're obligated to kind of go through these motions, but we dispel the complaint every time and, you know, shut that case, and then another one would come, you know? And so, like, we went through this over a course of months, and, like, this guy just didn't stop. Most of our guests were pretty easygoing about it, but, you know, it's just not something we should have to deal with.
Yeah, it was silly, and unfortunately the owner decided to sell his property. There were a lot of reasons behind it, but this next door neighbor was a big cause of stress for everybody. Those are pretty bad examples, and they weren't fun for anyone involved, but there is one city that we operate in where things are getting pretty ugly.
Alright, so we could talk your ears off about the backstory of this neighbor relationship turned ugly, but decided it would be better to summarize it, so here's the condensed version. In March 2020, the city of La Quinta, California, which is where a lot of the properties that we manage are located, paused their short-term rental program, and we weren't allowed to host, with the exception of a few cases, but most of these requests were denied. And they paused issuing new permits. But a few months later, we were allowed to host again, and we saw this huge tourism boom to the city. To give you an idea of how popular things got, look at these summer statistics. In pre-COVID summers, we'd fill most weekends but had a lot of empty weekdays. But in 2021, nearly 100% occupancy at peak season prices, all while outdoor temps were in the range of 110 to 120 degrees. I mean, even the pools are 95 degrees when it's this hot outside. But people continued to flock to the desert.
This was, you know, a combination of factors. People just weren't really able or willing to travel long distances on planes, so it was a natural sort of getaway from LA and Orange County in San Diego. We saw a lot of bookings and at top pricing. We were charging sort of fall prices in the middle of last summer, and guests weren't complaining.
Guests weren't complaining, but there was a small but loud anti-STR advocacy group that started to voice some concerns.
Yeah, we're not going to give them the credit of naming their name, but let's just call them the haters.
That's a good name.
We actually understand why some people were starting to get upset about the influx of tourism into neighborhoods. Because in the beginning, there were some bad operators stepping onto the scene, trying to capitalize on this STR boom. Many of them were operating without a permit, not vetting their guests, and I'm sure there were some legitimate complaints. So it's important to note that the city has done a really great job at ramping up their STR program over the past few years.
They increased permit fees, which went to fund more code compliance officers, so they're fully staffed, you know, to respond to complaints and any issues. They're on it, you know, a well-run program. The thing that happened over that time is complaint continually declined because of the fine structure, big money fines. So complaints went down, and we just pulled the data for 2021. They steadily declined quarter by quarter, and by the fourth quarter of 2021, there were only 85 calls into the city.
Let's do the math on that real quick. 1,165 permitted properties in the city, and Q4 has 92 days. That means that there were 107,180 opportunities for neighborhood disturbance in Q4, and 85 were reported. So 85 divided by 107,180 is basically nothing. And of those 85 hotline calls, 47 were from unpermitted properties which were shut down with a $3,000 fine, and the other 38 were from permitted properties. So 38 calls divided by 107,180 opportunities for disturbance is, well, you get the point.
So 38 calls about permitted rentals, And from those, only 3 citations were issued.
If that doesn't sound like a lot of citations, that's because it's not a lot of citations.
Yeah.
On top of that, transient occupancy taxes were the number 2 source of income for the city in 2021 and collected over $5.9 million.
The number 1 source of income for the city is property taxes, which short-term rental owners pay as well.
Double dipping. Not to mention the economic impact on the community, like shops and restaurants and individuals like house cleaners, landscapers, pool service providers, and the list goes on and on. The economic impact of short-term rentals on the area is shown to be about $100 million annually.
Even still, the haters kept on hating. And eventually they started a signature effort, a petition, to gather signatures to put the issue of how to handle short-term rentals to a public vote. This is something that happened a few years ago in Palm Springs, so it wasn't a new idea, but they applied it to La Quinta. So just recently, they've obtained enough signatures. They're going through some verification process, but the vote on how to handle short-term rentals in the future in La Quinta will be on the ballot in November. So we just kind of have to wait and see how that goes.
We are part of a pro-STR advocacy group called Vacation Rental Owners Network La Quinta, or VRON for short. I would highly recommend looking in your area to see if there is some sort of owners network that you could join. That, plus really paying attention to city council meetings or their meeting minutes if you can't catch the live meeting. It really helps you stay informed on what's going on in your community, especially if things start to get a little turbulent.
Yeah, and with something like VRON, there's strength in numbers where they can apply, a concentrated and organized force. They can publicize the good parts of short-term rentals and the positive impact they have on the community.
Education is really going to be key with this effort. We hesitated about oversharing in this video and possibly scare you or make you not want to pursue your hosting goals, but we always want to be transparent with you guys. That's why you subscribed, right? You're always going to encounter people in your hosting journey and in life in general that are going to try and take you down.
Just do your best to brush these people off and move on, and don't perpetuate arguments that aren't going anywhere. You just got to put on your customer service hat, give them a smile, and wish them a nice day and walk away.
And if you want to learn more about the smart home equipment that we use to enforce our good neighbor policy and to keep our operations running smoothly, be sure to check out this video. This one. No, this one.
That one.
Yeah.
All right.
It's probably down there.
Somewhere. You'll
All
see
right.
a link.
See you in the next video.
Yep, take care.